What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Die Is podcast. My name is Alex. I'm here with Justin.
And Nick.
Oh, you took it from me.
The host duties are getting pooped down already.
We're cutting them back.
Yeah.
You did the same thing our last bat rep, though. You're like, you always do this on the podcast. I'm taking it.
This is my turn.
So tonight we've got a super exciting episode about the new General's Handbook, the new direction that we're going to be going for at least 6 months for the meta, for everything. And these are some massive changes.
Talk about a U-turn, man.
Yeah, these are some big stuff.
Right.
But before we get into that, what have you been playing lately?
So, I got finally into Beast of Chaos. I finally started to figure it out a little bit, and then Daughter's book came out, and I've played Daughters like 4 times recently. And I like Daughters. I don't think it's the place where I'm going to be going right now. But, what I've found is, like, everybody talks about Marathi being this big bad. And she is, like, her rules are different, right? But I'm just finding, like, you typically want to shove her in and have her do damage. Things are very tough now around the game. So she doesn't, like, just, like, wipe stuff out.
Yeah.
Like, if you put her into 30 chain rasps, she might be fighting 30 chain rasps until she dies. And then Daughters of Cain is so flimsy that, like, once she dies, it's like you better be way up in points or have done, like, really well up until that point because everything's coming back at you and you don't have much staying power. So I like it. I've obviously only played it 4 times. I'm no expert, but that's just my initial opinion. I've tried mainly Drake Chikaneth because I want to see Witch Elves and Sister Slaughter do well. And they seem really good if you get Mind Razor off and you get on the charge and you have Gladiatrix backing them up. Yeah, they kill everything. But, like, Nighthawk doesn't care.
Right.
Just an army of blenders.
Nighthawk cares about a lot of attacks.
Yeah.
Yes.
And cares if Mind Razor's off because of that extra damage. But they don't care about Ren.
Well, there's a lot of things in the game that are just so durable that they can often weather something like that. Probably losing a unit.
Yeah.
But then you can't accept a swing back, right? So you get in, you take off some screens, great, they're going to peel you.
Yep.
And that's so different than what you're used to in Nurgle,
yeah,
right?
I usually like resilience, and this is not how this book plays at all. It's destroy, get up early, and hold on for dear life. At least that's what I've been finding. I'm sure there can be better ways to play it. And then, obviously, with Beasts, I kind of cribbed a list that's fairly close to what Dan Bradshaw just won English Masters with, and it seems very strong. Zangor and Lightened on Disc are awesome.
Yeah.
Like, just in general, they move far if you can manage to get them into stuff that don't hit them particularly hard, and then they get the backswing. It just is, earth-shattering. And the list Dan was playing was all herd, so he was summoning a unit of 3, like, every other turn, which is crazy good. So, yeah, I think Beast of Chaos is not played frequently, but it's really good. I'm hoping to bring it to a couple tournaments coming up here. What about you guys?
Alex?
So I've been getting back into Lumineth. It's a rumored book on the horizon. So
You like to play things as they're dying.
I like. I don't feel like they're dying. They don't feel dead yet, especially when.
They're about to get some new life, for sure.
Yeah. And just having a new book on the horizon, I mean, it sucks saying the 3rd book in, as many years, but assuming that's actually the book that's coming, but...
we know it's coming because we saw the cover, right?
Yeah.
Well, we saw a picture, but they reuse art enough now.
Sure.
Who knows?
Yeah, but just getting back into them, and I'm remembering how many rules they have that just stack out of nowhere.
Oh, man, what a brutal book.
Yeah.
Brutally frustrating book to play against sometimes.
Sometimes it's frustrating to play. The worst is having to explain to somebody, like, your rules and be like, I swear to you this is in the book.
Right. No, you actually don't get to attack here. Sorry.
Yeah.
And bravery is never really concerned as long as I'm within this much.
Yeah.
Right.
With the Cathalar, who is significantly cheaper now in the new season.
She better just be like a 1-cast, do nothing wizard.
We're waiting on the FAQ, so I think some of those really big point swings are hiding behind some War Scroll updates that we haven't seen.
Do we think there's going to be War Scroll updates?
I believe in the FAQ. It's not going to be the General's Handbook, but there's always the FAQ that comes with it, and I think we'll see some news.
I didn't know if they were just pricing it out as like, we're not going to have different prices between the GHB and the book that's coming in a couple of months, so let's just get the points up. Which makes it insane for this
Right.
Frankenstein period where you could player at new points, but...
Well, and there's a new unit in the GHB called, like, the Enlightener.
Yeah.
Which, I wonder if the order was supposed to be different or something, because I can't remember a time that we've potentially spoiled a new unit in a points book.
It's happened a couple of times. I think it's happened for some of the Warcry warbands and things like that. But definitely interesting timing. And the expectation, I think, with the Lumineth book is that we get a new temple. And a new temple has so far consisted of a unit, a hero, and another piece. Right?
Yeah.
And just getting one model means that maybe isn't the case. We're not getting a new
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with. Like we have enough right now.
Yeah. There's stuff that never gets played.
Yeah. Well, and there's some stuff that definitely needs to be updated to the 3.0 kind of era. Being able to reroll in Iliatha with Sentinels, reroll hits of 1 with 2 units for a command
really
point.
Good.
Like stuff like that, it wouldn't be in a new book.
Right.
So, so kind of updating that kind of stuff is going to be.
Well, your favorite thing coming now is about wind spirits, right?
Oh yeah.
We can get into that later if you want to discuss it. But Goad, what is it called?
Goading Arrogance.
Goading Arrogance is the worst feature of that entire book. If you watch our last Bat Rep, it just completely shreds me.
It's one of the worst rules.
That's why you take
And
it.
so you happily run it.
It's one of the worst best rules.
Yeah, well, it's. I like the extra Aether Quartz, and you have to take it.
Oh, so
you're
it's
forced to take
inside.
it. Yeah, I mean, what am I gonna do?
Yeah, gotta do it.
So, Nick, what are you playing?
I've been playing some Cities of Sigmar, a couple of different types of Cities of Sigmar. I played some Hammer Hall and some Tempest Eye, and I haven't played Living Cities yet, but I'm going to dabble on it, I think. But then I've also been playing some Night Haunt and lean in that direction a little bit. I'm super excited about some of the aspects of the Night Haunt book that I haven't fully explored yet, so I'm going to dig into those, I think, a little bit more.
You're pretty excited about what some of the new Endless Spells have done for some of your armies, right?
Absolutely. There's some pieces in the new General's Handbook that I think are just going to unlock some combinations that can really be exciting.
Yeah.
So let's get into the new General's Handbook.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of places where you can get a page-by-page dissection of everything that's in the General's Handbook, and by now you've probably got a copy on the way. So we're not going to go through rule by rule and really do a full dissection of this, but we're going to talk about the ways this is going to affect the meta and affect our armies.
We'll go top level.
Yeah.
A little bit mid-level.
Yeah.
And occasionally a deep dive.
Dig down deep on something. So they marketed this as the kind of battle line infantry book.
The season of the infantry.
And but we're still in Gur.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
And they gave you some rules.
Yeah.
some infantry based rules, but for every infantry based rule they gave you one that was anti-infantry, which is quite interesting.
And I think that's what they want to be targeting. They did it with the monsters, right? You've got these great rules that help monsters, and then you've got Hunters of the Heartlands and the victory point against monsters, so there was some balance on the other side of it. I'm a little bit on the fence about whether the balance on this side is actually preserved, and if maybe the balance is one direction versus the other. But
yeah, they didn't really give you a way to reliably kill monsters constantly in the last one. They just made them worth points if you killed them or, stop their stomps. Here, I mean...
Should we talk about it? Let's talk about
special rules.
Yeah.
So there is a new thing called Galatian Veterans.
Galatian Veterans, yeah. That's how we're pronouncing it.
Yes.
Yeah. Might be wrong.
Battalion.
Yeah.
Veterans. We
Yeah,
call them
we're
veterans.
going to call them veterans from now on. But they're battle line units that have a wound characteristic of 4 or less that do not have a mount.
Right. So your typical foot infantry, every army's got some.
Yeah,
Yep.
includes conditional battle line.
Except Sons of Behemoth. I guess they don't have any.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are a lot of rules that go along with veterans, or that affect veterans, or...
The book is about the veterans, really.
Yes. And killing them. They have done away with the... when selecting whoever goes second in turn 3 gets rid of an objective.
Yep.
For Proving Grounds, which they spoiled on Warcom, I believe, at one point.
They did.
But whoever goes second picks an objective
Every single turn.
every single battle round.
Including round 1, which is really impactful.
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't have to. So
Right.
if you find it more advantageous to wait till later, you can do that.
You can only pick each objective once, which I think is a really interesting element of this.
Because that might make you wait till later.
And
Yes.
often turn 1, what I see myself doing is picking an objective that I control.
Yeah.
And saying, only veterans can contest this one. Now, my opponent can't do that to me later, so
Yeah.
my veterans can freely move off of it. Right?
Sure.
But also, and we should say that picking that objective makes it so the veterans are the only ones who can contest it. But if you already control that objective, doesn't really matter, right?
Right. This isn't changing who controls the objective or whether you can still control it. It's only changing whether you can take it over.
Yes, and there's a battle plan where you don't take control of objectives upon deployment, but for the majority of them, all but one, you take control of objectives on deployment. So you can still choose to go second, choose your own objective. You already have it. Doesn't matter what you have on it, really.
Right. And if you take the opponents in that situation, they still have it unless you can get to it and take it from them.
Yeah, and then if they can get to yours by, turn 2.
Right.
But,
So typically turn 1, I see this being used defensively to prevent it from being used against you later.
Yeah.
And then later in the game, you can have some play with your veterans.
Are we again seeing where we want to get low drop so we get to play it for a double turn and then play strategically where we get to, at least in turn 1, decide where...
There's certainly a lot of incentive for that, right?
Yep.
And there might be enough incentive in the other elements of battalions that we'll talk about later to outweigh that, but it definitely strengthens that I want to have low drops so I can go second in most armies. And now some armies want to have low drops so they can go first.
Sure. But more often than not, when I use it, I want to take a double. And
often,
so.
yeah, get that first double, which is real big.
yeah, we should mention, Steal the Initiative is still around.
Yeah, 1 drop is still how you decide priority.
Yes.
Kind of a missed opportunity.
I was begging no one. I talked to no one about it.
Sure.
But I was thinking about it, that like this would be so good to get rid of. Because it for me,
Dear Diary.
Yeah, for me it just makes me not want to build other. I don't want to bring a bunch of battalions. I want to bring a 1 drop. Almost always.
Well, now we'll get into battalions.
We'll get into the new battalions, which might just be enticing enough for some armies to want to go. Let the opponent choose which way they go, or to assume maybe your opponent is, speccing into one of these, but. Yeah.
I think it will be more common with the battalions that you'll be able to, if you want to go first, choose the initiative.
Yeah.
There's going to be more armies that are grabbing at least one of these battalions and leaning into it.
And then the other, one of the other special rules is Bonds of Battle. Mm-hmm. It's a kind of like a 40k-ish rule. Instead of using range, you can pick a unit within a half inch of an enemy unit. Or a model within a half inch of an enemy model, and models within a half inch of that model can attack. It's kind of confusing. But
only veterans.
Yeah, only veterans.
Which means it's got to be battle line. It's got to not have a mount, all those things.
So it's basically allowing a lot of the 32 millimeter models to now fight in 2 ranks.
Or 40 or 50.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything that previously felt really disadvantaged now has the opportunity at least to fight in 2 ranks, which 25 is always enjoyed.
Yeah,
and it doesn't affect 25s, right?
No, it shouldn't.
25s
really.
Can't get into 3 now, right? No.
Not where they couldn't before, right? They've got to have 2-inch reach. 3.
Right after they gave Thralls a 2-inch reach, But that'll stick around long after this is gone.
It does feel a little bit of a slap in the face to the options that are 2-inch reach. So if you've got a unit that had swords before and spears, and now swords are just oftentimes just a clearly better choice because you're getting the 2-rank fighting anyway.
So, interesting enough, I was looking at my Cruel Boys Gut Rippas.
Oh, sure.
And I was thinking that exact point. But then I looked, and the only bonus the swords get is they get +1 to wounds. 4s and 4s and 4s and 3s when all I really care about is mortal wounds.
That's a case where it doesn't make much difference, but there are certainly cases where it does make
Sure.
And with this rule, just like the last rule, it is an option, so you can choose to use this or the weapons range for things like Skaven, who just got that rule where the more models they have, the bigger their range gets. So you can still choose that rule instead of this one.
And mix and match model by model. Right. So if you've got 25 millimeter, and you've got 2 ranks fighting with your 1-inch reach, and then you've got that one that's a little bit spread out, but he's within a half an inch, you can stick it there.
Sure.
They gave you a spell, just like last time.
Instead of Metamorphosis.
Yep. It's a casting value of 7, range of 12 inches, and you pick an enemy unit and have the number of models or number contesting an objective, rounding down.
So I feel like
great.
Yeah, the spell got a lot better. Command ability got a lot worse.
Right.
So
Metamorphosis was that thing you used when you had 2 monsters and you entered an extra point for Ferocious Advance, so you tried to get the Ferocious Advance 3rd. That was the only time Metamorphosis really got used. Occasionally you could try to get...
There's some sneaky things you could do in Ogres where you would cast it, and then because it's a monster, now the charges are... you count more, and then your charges are 4-ups instead of 6-ups.
Right.
So there's little corner cases, but not really often.
I would use it occasionally for just to get a monstrous rampage, especially if I was near faction terrain, which almost never happened.
Yes, that was the big thing.
But
in general, most games didn't have any impact. And Gaze of Gur, I think, if you've got wizards around, this is going to have an impact often in games.
Does this have things like Kragnos? And
yeah, absolutely. It has the number of models that they count as. So if they count as 30, now they count as 15. Right.
I like it. There's a command ability. This is Overwhelming Assault.
The biggest waste of paper in the book.
Yeah.
Well,
let's not even talk about it. Honestly,
we should talk about it to say that it's so situational that you've got to have a number of models in the unit that you can beat, and that unit has to be veterans, or you've got to use it with a veterans unit, and they've got to have a wounds characteristic of 4 or less. So you've got to have a wounds characteristic of 4 or less unit that is something like 3 or less models.
And then you still have to roll. You have to roll dice now too.
Yes.
And if your roll is then greater than the number of models, so it better be lower than 4.
Right. And then it gives them strike last, which is great. Like if this was less conditional, it would be incredibly powerful. But the situations where this comes up are things like Troggoths.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and ogres.
Yeah. Not even Kurnoth, right? Nope. You can't do it on Kurnoths. You can't do it on most
maybe
units.
Brutes would be worthwhile to try it against, but it's not.
So typically, you're only going to be able to do this. The most common case, I think, is you've got a unit of something, and you've whittled it down so it's almost destroyed, and then you use this to finish it off.
But by then, if it's almost destroyed, there's better things to do with your command abilities.
Right. Yeah, it's if you use it on a unit of 5, right? That's kind of our baseline 5 model unit. You got to roll a 6 to get it off.
That's brutal.
You can use this on the new Spite or the Sylvaneth Beetle Riders, right?
Well, they're 5 wounds.
Oh, they're 5 wounds.
Yeah, so no, you cannot use.
So you can use it on eels.
You can use it on eels. Which the unit of 3 eels on a 4-up, you can make fight last. So there's a few things that this targets really hard, and there's a few, and then everything else you just ignore.
Yeah. The battalions.
This is where I think it really gets interesting.
Yes. So there's 2 of them. They have the same number of units that can go in. 3.
And
2
they have to
required,
be veterans.
3 total.
They've got to be Only one of them has to be veterans.
Oh, only one.
Yeah.
Has to be
So expert conquerors. This one was on Warcom as well.
Yep.
Veterans units only. Each model in this battalion counts as 3 models for the purpose of contesting objectives.
And this is 2 or 3 troop units.
Yes. This is 2 or 3 veteran units, which have to
Veteran
be battle line.
troops.
Yeah,
right.
have to be non-mounted. Skinks are gonna love this.
Yeah. A lot of
Night
things
Haunt are gonna love this.
Coalesce skinks in particular.
Coalesce
this
skinks,
because of the
yes.
next rule that we talk about.
Yes.
Zombies are gonna like this.
Yeah.
Just anything that's. Gits might like this. Anything that's gonna flood the board with a lot of bodies.
Honestly, it doesn't even need to be that many bodies.
No, it really doesn't.
Anytime you've got something fast, something that can go tag an objective with a few bodies, and count as 3 bodies get an objective, and they count as 9. Suddenly, you're stealing objectives that you should.
Yeah.
You don't have to fight.
Right.
So that's nice.
Yeah. I think a little bit more insane one is bounty hunters.
Sure.
If a target of an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in this battalion is a veterans unit, add 1 to the damage characteristic of that attack.
So we talk about the veterans give you the ability to count as 3. The veterans give you the ability to fight it in 2 ranks. The veterans give you the ability to contest the proving grounds.
And a ton of battle tactics are keyworded to the
ton of battle
veterans.
tactics.
Yes.
And then you've got 1 battalion that says, all right, you've got some veterans. I'm going hog wild against them.
It makes it real rock paper scissorsy.
Mhm.
Like, what are you doing? What am I doing? Did I get the guy that's an expert conquerors, or that went heavy on veterans, and now I'm heavy on bounty hunters?
And I think the big thing here is it doesn't require you to be a veteran to be in this battalion.
Yeah.
So
you just
things
have to
like
be
you got to be a troop
unit.
which is there are so many things.
Yeah,
that can be
let's just everything.
Leviathan,
Yeah. We're gonna name every
Nautilus.
single one.
right. Go Trek.
Yeah.
For example, Go Trek is a troop. Leviathan, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Dragons, Stormgate Guard are troops.
Yeah.
There's a million incredibly killer units that aren't going to suffer the drawback of this and are just going to get the upside.
Should this have been only veterans as well?
It feels like probably yes.
Should definitely have been only veterans, or they should have said none of these units can be reinforced. That's what
That's
thought.
option
Like,
2, right?
then at least you can't take 4 dragons
Or 6 dragons.
or 6 dragons, and that. Good luck keeping any of your veterans on the table if at that point.
You imagine, veterans are often the things that you're going to be screening with, right? These are troops. So
Now you're screening for them.
You're screening, and you're taking not double damage, but +1 damage on all attacks, which is often double damage. You've got a unit of 6 dragons that's in this bounty hunters battalion. They get into your lines turn 1, of course, because that's what dragons do.
Yeah.
And now each of those dragons is just putting out absurd damage into your troops. You can often be in a situation where you're losing half or more of your veterans in the first swing.
So this makes me want to take the absolute minimum number of veterans, right?
Often,
This
right?
is.
But then you look at the battle tactics and you're like, how am I going to get battle tactics
And
if I don't
proving
have more
It's
veterans?
a balancing act.
It
It's
is
a tight-
really
tightrope
It's a
walk.
tightrope. It's like it's absolutely brutal.
Do you think?
When we look at something like zombies that you mentioned, a 60 man of zombies is incredibly durable and incredibly durable against a lot of the things in the meta. But if you take 20 Bladegeist Revenants, 20 Bladegeist Revenants should not lift 60 zombies in an activation unless they're in bounty hunters. You get double damage, and suddenly that 60 man of zombies is just gone.
In double damage has been shown, or adding 1 to damage. Let's think about Iron Jaws and what they absolutely rely on. It's crazy what 1 damage does.
Oh,
now,
it's incredible.
When you have no limit on how many times these units could be reinforced, what will you do?
Yep.
You have the natural gain unit. But these units are going to be just so crazy. It's going to be a balance of how many you want to take. I personally, when I saw that, I was like, I'm going to try to minimize what I have in my armies that are veterans.
I think it's very, very tempting to say, I want to bring no veterans, or I want to bring 1 to 2 units of veterans, ideally that I can teleport a deep strike to get on objectives for proving grounds. And yes, they're going to die when they get swung into, but I don't really care.
Can summoned on proving grounds, can summoned veterans contest.
So one of the battle tactics has the distinction, these must be starting army veterans and another battle tactic does not have that distinction.
What about
Proving Grounds does not have that.
Right. So it seems to be that when you add a unit to your army, it becomes veterans as appropriate and counts for all the things.
So, like, now something that a lot of people don't love in the game, which is summoning, becomes quite a bit stronger.
Right. Summoning a unit of veterans onto an objective that can die because you got them for free.
Yeah.
So double damage against them, not all that impactful, but.
For a lot of armies, you just don't have the option, right?
Right.
I'm just looking at Expert Conquerors with Skinks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Counting
as coalesce.
Skinks ignoring bounty hunters.
So there's a couple things in the game.
Yeah.
Coalesced.
I mean, Seraphine needed the help, so it's good that we got that.
Now, it isn't nothing, right? That +1 damage still takes 2 damage attacks up to 3 and then down to 2 from Coalesce.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's still significant there. Nighthaunt can also do this, ignore 1 damage or reduce damage by 1, and they can actually stack it with multiple...
So are we believing that's stackable?
Coolgusts. It's certainly stackable right now. We're waiting for the Nighthaunt FAQ. But right now you could stack multiple Cruel Gusts, which means that even if your opponent gets to 3 damage with the Bounty Hunters, you can pull them back down to 1 damage.
Stacking Cruel Gusts seems really rude.
Waiting on the FAQ.
Is there anything off the top of your heads that becomes playable with Bounty Hunters that wasn't before?
I think there are certainly things that become playable with this combination of things.
Because I'm looking at like things with D3 damage. Are any of those that like come to mind that become D3
now
plus
you're
1
showing that we didn't do our homework
and get some consistency?
It's embarrassing.
There are certain things that I really like with Bounty Hunters. I like anything that can be in this troop role and not be targetable as a veteran. I love in Bounty Hunters. So that's, like I said, dragons, non-battle line fulminators. And we should say this +1 damage is melee attacks only, so it's not going to be a dominant range.
Yeah, it's not going to be a...
going back to the Expert Conquerors, one unit that benefits greatly from that is actually Brutes, which have struggled to see play in Iron Jaws. Now, if you're Expert Conquerors, which are typically going to be battle line or 1 wound models, they can't, even if they're worth 3, they can't contest the models if they're within 3 of Brutes that are contesting that. So Brutes could be strengthened. Now, Brutes aren't going to stand up to Bounty Hunters, I'll tell you that much. But
no.
One thing I'll note is that anything with 1 damage benefits the most from +1 damage.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of things like Cities of Sigmar units that are on 1 damage and often have good attack profiles otherwise. Slaves to Darkness has a lot of these 1 damage profiles.
Even stuff like Bestigor or stuff like that have been typically, especially with the other thing that's strengthening veterans, all of a sudden Bestigor have tons of attacks, fighting in 2 ranks. I'm talking about an army I'm obviously playing right now.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, and anything that can benefit from Bounty Hunters without receiving the drawback. But even like cheap like Wind Chargers, Saurus Knights, Eels, like can all benefit from this without receiving the drawback.
Right.
But then, right again, we're in the balancing act. Like,
Yes.
you need to complete battle tactics. At least I think you do.
Right.
Unless we're saying, we'll get into it later. But
I think it's interesting that this does benefit 1 damage attacks as much as it does. So when I look at Stormgreat Guard, they're top of mind right now, so I'm referencing them a lot. But Stormgreat Guard have 2 profiles you can pick. One is the Lance's 2 damage profile with fewer attacks, 2 damage on the charge. And the other is the Blades, which are a 1 damage profile with more attacks. The Blades benefit more from veterans than do the Lances.
Yeah.
The Lances normally win out because you're charging in, but the Blades might just be the choice now if you're going to run them with Bounty Hunters.
well, and there's still some rumors that we could see some FAQs coming out of this
I expect we
book.
will, yeah.
So,
For sure.
in Stormgreat Guard are always... I don't have much of a problem with them. I think they're fine at this point in time. I don't see them dominating the meta or anything like that, but I know a lot of people really don't like them. So I could easily see them getting an FAQ. I could see Coalesce getting an FAQ, to be honest with you.
It's one of the rumors that's coming, right?
I just wanna because I was just thinking about Dawn Riders.
Oh, sure.
So they have 2 attacks with the Guardian Sword, 2 attacks with the hooves, and an additional 2 attacks if they have a wounds characteristic of 1 and do not have a mount.
Right.
So veterans get an additional 2 attacks, and if you bring them in the bounty hunters, those 2 attacks also have 2 damage. So you're boosting each Dawn Rider by 4 damage.
All of their mounts get this benefit as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is really when you think about what's going on. Well, we'll get into battle tactics and grand strategies have taken just a huge
Massive
step
nature.
up in difficulty, and we'll get into that. But like when list building here, keeping this bounty hunters in your mind, expert conquerors in your mind. Do I want monsters? Do I want, all of a sudden this is completely different thoughts that you have to have on construction of an army. That you just really didn't have to think about before.
And not just list building. I think if you can, early on in the game, assess what your opponent has, take off their bounty hunters to protect your veterans, take off their veterans to protect your objectives, those things are suddenly so much more important in priority. Right?
So table.
Well, yeah, tabling them seems to be the strategy that I'm going to employ.
And I think anything that can move fast, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
in bounty hunters, that already does a lot of attack. Then I think of gore hunters. That's kind of a boon for them. Like they're already crazy blenders. Now
Yeah.
think about them doing another damage
You can imagine Gorgrunt is getting to 3 damage on every profile.
on 3 run.
On 2 or 3 run, depending on whether
well,
you're lying.
right, and that alpha strike, we'll say.
Yes.
Do you, looking at these 2 battalions, do either of these, without seeing how the meta shakes out, push you away from a 1-drop into bringing one of these in your typical list?
So I'm scared of expert conquerors a little bit because it commits you so hard to, not so hard, but it does commit you to at least having 3 veteran units in.
Yes,
Just
but
2. You can run it with 2.
Sure, 2.
Yeah.
It scares me. Just I don't know. It's going to be a hard balance. I could see 5 drops being the standard. You take 2 expert conquerors, you take 2 bounty hunters or 3 bounty hunters, and then you have your wonder.
And then as soon as you skip one of those, you get a major advantage, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's really a challenge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. These are, I will say, these are probably the most compelling battalions we've seen to be a reason to not be a 1-drop.
Yeah. And the only, back in the day, it was just Warlord, right? And Warlord still exists, right?
Right, Warlord's still around. Hunters was also a big reason. Alpha Beast Pack for a few armies. But I think
and these are more
trump
component. Warlord's great.
Sure.
But I don't know. I mean, you could just go to 1,000,000 drops and just have everything, right?
Right.
So
yeah, and there's going to be those breakpoints, right? Are you 1, or do you grab bounty hunters, so you're 3 or 4, or do you grab both, like you mentioned, so you're a 6 or 7, or do you grab that warlord? These are all troop battalions, so you can grab that warlord and both of these and be at 14 drops and see what you can do.
it's going to take a lot of playing to figure this out.
Absolutely.
It's going to take
Well, and we only got 6 months to figure it out.
It's going to take 1 game to know what you don't like.
Yeah. So to sum it up, 2 crazy new battalions that are really all about thinking and trying to balance in your mind when you're building your armies. So
Rally's going to be so good when every 1 model you bring back counts as 3 on an objective.
Yeah, you can swing an objective substantially there.
Okay, so
grand
you want
strategies.
to talk about some grand strategies? You guys were talking on Warhammer Weekly about how battle tactics and grand strategies are just gimmies, or maybe just battle tactics.
Right. Well, both often were.
Yes.
Unless you were in a situation where you were losing so hard that you didn't have a chance.
Or like it frequently came up if you're like hold the line and you're down in some points and the mental math starts happening. How can I kill the opponent's line just to like escape with like a 1 or 2 point?
Yes.
But depending on your build, you would often have a grand strat that was very reliable in your build.
Yeah.
Or occasionally you'd have a build that couldn't get into one of those very reliable, and then it became kind of an unviable build.
Yes. And I mean that's all out the window.
Right.
Out the window.
The reliability for grand strats has just taken a nosedive unless you're running one from your tome.
Do we want to run through them, or is that something?
I think
They're
some
all
violence.
hard. They're all hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like some of them are based on having veterans alive, And if you're building into veterans, those are really compelling. You can have your veterans either 3 units alive or 1 unit in each quarter, and that seems to be 1 unit can contest all 4 quarters for that. So
that was
those
one
seem
interesting thing that Alex just brought up to us when we were going through these. So Nick recently built an army, and demonstration of strength was what you went with. When it was when the Battalions, you complete this grand strategy if there are 3 or more veteran units from your starting army on the battlefield. So this might incentivize like a MSU army that can be tough and keep things a little bit back so that this survives. And then I said, well, show of dominance makes no sense to me because that was just demonstration of strength, but making it harder because you had to have 4 units. And
me being a dirty towel player in 40K, show of dominance when the battle ends. You complete this grand strategy if there are any friendly veteran units in each quarter of the battlefield. It doesn't say they have to be wholly within. It doesn't say they have to be different.
Right.
So you can have 1 model in the center of the table controlling or being in all 4 of those
in
quarters.
the ideal situation, or 2 units spread across a couple center lines and you cover them.
Now that seems...
rules is written. There's nothing now that indicates that you couldn't do
loves rules is written.
But again, here's the thing. Games frequently don't make it to turn 5, right? So all of a sudden games really need to go to like turn 5 for a lot of these. All of them, you brought this up, or you guys both brought this up. A lot of these, so when the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if there are no enemy units wholly within your territory. Right. If you don't have bottom of 5,
it's almost impossible to guarantee this.
Your opponent just runs on and ends your grand strategy. So you really want bottom of 5 just to try to ensure you get that, and that is dictated by a dice roll. So no promises there.
Well, and then tame the land. If you control all objectives that aren't wholly outside your territory.
All objectives.
Yes. So if there's an objective you don't control, if your opponent gets bottom of 5 and they go, hey, you can't control this with anything other than veterans, that really kind of...
Right. If you don't control that one, you can't take it.
Yes. So unless you have veterans left, which... based on the other battalions and the way the game's going, you might not have.
Yeah.
So you guys can look through these. They're all very difficult.
I think the consequence of grand strategies is going to be higher because we're going to talk about battle tactics next. I think overall game scores are going to be lower because some of the battle tactics are much harder to get. And so those 3 points from grand strat are going to now be more important than they were before.
But that's good, isn't it?
Yes, I think it is good.
Yeah.
Because it was so... Like, if you missed one battle tactic in the past, you were feeling way on the back foot.
It is good unless some people can just easily pick up 5.
Well, that's what we're getting into. So grand strategies and battle tactics, as we'll discuss, are also listed in each 3rd edition book or in a White Dwarf update.
And oftentimes in very different ways.
Very different
really
ways
good.
being difficulty levels is what it means. Right. So
some of them are gimmies.
So all of a sudden now, a power of a book could really be in its grand strategies or in its battle tactics.
Which is, you can say, one way to balance armies. You can give them good battle tactics and grand strats, but it's certainly a very frustrating way to balance armies.
To the point where I think it is an interesting point to bring up for TOs.
Yeah.
Are you allowing, like on our channel in the most recent report we issued, I said I wasn't going to take battle tactics specifically from the doc book because Alex is playing Luna. They don't have any expansions.
Yep.
So I'm picking from a list of 10. I don't know the number off the top of my head. Let's just call it 12 or whatever. And Alex is picking off half of that. That doesn't equate to fairness to me.
Yeah, and we did... in 40K, they just did do a chapter approved where they gave secondaries for armies that don't have secondaries yet. I'm kind of surprised they didn't do something similar with the General's Handbook.
They've almost gotten there. There's not too many armies that don't either have a 3rd edition tome or a White Dwarf at this point, but there's a few.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few, but there's so many armies, like a few can be 12. You know what I mean?
Legion of the First Prince is not in a bad place by any stretch, but they're not going to get one. There's not going to be a White Dwarf for them. Right?
So there's, for battle tactics, these all seem hard, and then there's one you're going to do every turn, or every first turn.
So we went through them, we walked through them before we started. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tactics, and there's really only one you can confidently say, I will get on the first turn.
Top of one.
Top of one.
Yep.
Before you could always do Ferocious Advance. You felt really good about on a lot of battle tactics doing aggressive expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Monsters Takeover was always there for you.
Yes.
And now it is.
So the rest involve getting into your opponent's territory, taking an objective or a piece of terrain in your opponent's territory, taking out veterans.
Killing veterans is frequently. Killing units is all of a sudden very important.
And there's a lot of armies that can do that early in the game, that can project like that, but there's a lot of armies that can't, and that is skewing toward an Alpha Strike playstyle that I'm not sure that we want to skew toward.
Well, the other thing you were saying was that this feels like we're moving to, let's try to delete the other person's army, and then we'll figure out our stuff later as far as
war of attrition.
Basically. A lot of these are unreliable enough that your best path to victory feels like oftentimes making sure that your opponent can't complete their game plan. So the armies that are already doing really well in just tabling your opponent, it seems like this is leaning toward them. Kill something turn one. Don't let them kill something. Right? Take them off the table and go from there. That game plan just seems to be getting strengthened.
And that's not fun. That's not the objective based.
It's fun. Right.
For the one person.
Well, it's one style of play, right? But some people really like an attritional game. Some people really like a tactical game. And those should be equally valid.
Well, we play an objective game for a reason, right?
Sure.
So it's not all I'm wiping out your army, which some war games are, right?
So,
but
there's just two things that I have questions about. How, for armies like Suns, how bad is it to not have veterans for these battle tactics? Like looking through them. Or
You certainly miss out on some of them as options, right? You just take a few of them and you can set those aside. Never going to pick those.
Well, then there's a balance.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to have that +1 damage going into you.
Do they have book grand strategies in battle tactics?
They do. Well, they've got them from the White Dwarf.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Then you have, now granted, the Proving Ground becomes a little bit difficult for you at times.
Right.
But, you do still tag a ton. I don't know. Sons, I think, is supposed to be getting a new book as well, so this will have to be considered in him. But,
they're going to get a bunch of four wound regular sized
Man Crushers going before
yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it is. I don't think we've seen enough of Sons being able to park on objectives. I don't think anyone's going to be upset that they suffer for a little while.
Definitely not
in the objectives game.
But there are other armies that struggle with this too. If you run a pure Beastclaw Raiders list, they're going to have that same plan. If you do want to run something like Idneth and you want to run something other than Thralls and Reavers, suddenly you're giving up this ability. If you want to run a cavalry-heavy list, which has been super popular throughout, I think, all editions, there are certain armies that you really want to run cavalry, and certain people really enjoy that playstyle, having the speed with the trade-offs. Cavalry is really going to struggle at a lot of these. But on the other side, they're going to not give up some because there's no veterans.
And they're also potentially going
to
to
And they can go on bounty hunters.
Yes.
And they don't have to worry about getting
and their
extra
mounts
damage.
get +1 damage.
So again, this is where we're getting into like the whole balance game. You need to balance. How can I get battle tactics? How can I keep my army around? How can I, maybe it's just such a mess of thinking that it's just like, just take whatever you want and figure it out later. You know what I mean? There's no perfect balance.
I cannot think of a game change or even a battle tome that's come out where I have felt less confident about my initial assessments than I feel about this.
I have no. I honestly, and there's a couple complicating factors, as in, I might just ignore all these if I can use Doc, right? Like,
Doc can very easily grab 3.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll always take against the odds, which is pick one unit and you're starting an army on the battlefield. You complete this battle tactic, and at the end of the turn, any models from that are contesting an objective you control.
Right. So top of 1, you have it.
Yeah, that. Then you use 3 you can always get.
Yep.
And now
suddenly you're at 4, which, given the difficulty of these,
is no guarantee
4
for
is
anyone.
Real good now.
So I mean, it's a really.
It's a great time.
I don't know. I don't like it.
It's an exciting time.
It's an exciting time. I just wish there was some consistency.
Just making you think outside the box, I think, is a good direction. I don't know if these are necessarily like the best battle tactics, but the fact that we always sit here and go, well, I'm just going to run the same thing I've been running.
Right.
this kind of turns that whole thing upside.
A lot of these are much more situational. You're going to have to evaluate the battlefield. You're going to have to figure out what you think you can do. A lot of them have an element of risk where they didn't before.
What if we went blind?
Here, that
like,
would suck.
No.
Oh, if your opponent
If
didn't
your
see what you
opponent
picked,
didn't see what you picked,
I think it would add a really interesting element to the game.
I would like
but
it.
It would remove a lot of counterplay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, then you got to counterplay for multiple. You have to guess, and you have to be like, okay, are they trying to do this? And it makes for bluffs and feints and stuff like that.
So the big reason you can't go blind is because the book tactics exist. This list of 8, I can anticipate which of these 8 do I think, especially as the turn starts developing, what are you angling for? But there's no way I can know all of the book ones.
The grand strategies, I wish you could go blind.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you could only use these GHB, I think it would be, because then you get rid of that whole 5th turn thing. I mean, you can always have an idea, but bluffing is really something that this game sometimes misses out on. And I think that would be fun to introduce.
Yeah. So, I mean, in short, the battle tactics are going to be harder. Grand strats are going to be harder. Scores are going to be lower.
Good. I mean, honestly, if you know, but in tournaments, really, at this point, you need almost to score all your battle tactics every round if you want to be in first place contention. Well, and it's not impossible. I think that's what most people that are in the top 2 or 3 are doing. But
right. Oftentimes, we'll see a tournament winner who 4 or 5 games scored hold 1, hold 2, hold more, battle tactic, grand strat every turn.
Yeah. Occasionally kill
even if they didn't do the hold more, because hold more was always the one that you could get away with a little bit because you didn't want to overextend.
So you're at 4 or 5, or with the bonus points, 6 victory points every turn all the way through. I think we're going to see a lot more of, well, you got the win, but you got 3 out of 5 battle tactics. Yeah. Or you got the win, you did well on battle tactics, you dropped your grand strat.
The things that I do, like, I would love to see when this book comes out, the hunt go away right away. And
see how it shakes out.
Yeah, and just see what it's like.
It's interesting because
that's the extra victory points for killing
certain units.
Yeah, certain units, dragons and salamanders.
Oh,
I think the risk with that.
We'll see what happens.
So already we've gotten rid of the bonus victory points for dragons. So before, everything,
no monsters.
No monsters, right? So before, if you killed a unit of Stormgreat Guard over 2 turns, you kill one in one round, you kill the next one in the next round, that's 3 victory points. Now it's 1.
Yeah.
That's a big shift immediately.
Yep.
And probably warranted with the lower overall score. You don't want that to be a 3-point swing.
Yeah. I don't want to get rid of the hunt yet. It's been we've talked. I think it's been good. Like, salamanders aren't taking as much anymore. And it's a risk reward for everyone building their list. It added an element, and
I have salamanders.
Yeah.
I don't agree necessarily with how the hunt approached fixing that balance, but it's hard to deny that it has had some positive impact on that balance.
So there's a bunch of new battle plans.
Yeah, a bunch of new battle plans.
There are plenty of people discussing all the new battle plans.
Yeah.
We don't need to dig into all of them.
Yeah, they're different.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a couple we can touch on. So one, and I'm terrible with the names of them, so you'll have to forgive me, but one of them gives you 2 points for killing a veteran unit.
That is the mighty and the cunning.
And we just talked about how overall scores are going to be a little bit lower. 2 points for every veteran unit. If you run up against something that's running a lot of veterans, particularly MSU veterans, this can be 20 points.
Yeah. And
just completely imbalancing in the results.
I'd say just take it off your list that you're going to run.
That one's gone.
You can run it for funsies.
I can't imagine that would be in a tournament packet.
Right.
Because you would think, but people do weird stuff. They roll dice to pick.
Well, you've got another one that's a knife to the heart sort of style where you.
I like that.
It's a better approach, I think, because it has this element of tug of war. You can't take all the objectives in one turn. You have to kind of take them incrementally. But at the same time, I don't see that being run in tournaments.
Are you talking about The lurkers
The
below.
lurkers
The
where you
lurkers
have to
will.
grab.
So you have to control your objective before you control the center one, and then you
Yes.
have to control the center one before you control your opponent.
I think it's a neat mechanic.
Which used to be, it is great because that was a horrible battle tactic before.
Right.
In any
Especially
edition,
when
you
you
want
can
to
just
talk about
delete
it.
one of the objectives.
Yes.
The only thing that I don't like about it is that all the objectives are aligned.
Yes.
straight
I don't
up.
really understand
Because
that
then
necessarily.
I can just grab, and my entire army is in the center.
I think
depending on what I
the
have.
idea there is to really disincentivize, or not disincentivize, but to eliminate the impact of really, really fast things being able to tag into
Deep
objectives.
striking,
Especially when you've got units of, for example, chain rasps that count as 3 and either move 8 or deep strike, you can very quickly get all over the field, right?
Yeah.
I would have liked to see 1 in the center, 2 on the outsides, 1 in the center again.
Sure.
Just to make you, make a choice, some kind of division. But
And one thing I'll add is I think that people shouldn't throw away the GHB 2021 pitch battles. Sure, if you don't want to run them in tournaments, that's up to you. But we don't have that many battle plans to begin with.
Right.
We play War Quota all the time because it expanded our list. All of them are well thought out and all of them are well constructed. We have like 6 from 2021. We haven't tested any of the new ones. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need
There
as
are a
many
few
good
of the
battle
new
plans as
ones
we
that
can get.
we could just get rid of, though.
Yeah.
Like, so the Nidus Paths is really interesting. That's the one you're bringing up now.
yes.
You've got the built-in ability to teleport corner to corner.
Yep.
So it's the very little tiny gate right there in the corner?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you've also got the ability to just shut this off very easily
Yes.
with a little unit here, and your opponent can't use
You
it.
have to. You have to dedicate something to kind of sitting in that area, but at the same time, it's not that hard to shut it off. It's a cool idea, though.
You know what, though? There's elite armies.
And they don't have a unit to go babysit.
They don't.
Very true.
And you're just going to babysit. It makes it interesting. But Suns aren't going to block that off.
Yeah, and I would love to see just the person who goes first and is like, I'm going to bring my whole army up, and you just sit your kind of stuff back and go, I'm just going to come behind you.
There's that one that I thought was a little odd that didn't force combat. It was it's the 4 corners one.
So instead of objectives, you're just controlling quarters of the battlefield, which means you can just go hide in one corner.
You could literally
and
be on
contest the whole
opposing
thing.
ends and just control 2 and then maybe make a rush when the at least the Vice pushed you together, and maybe this does push you to start gaining some more points later.
Battle lines drawn
potentially.
where you hold the quarters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The nice thing about this is you can't remove units and set them back up. So there is no teleporting.
Sure.
You say that's a nice thing. I say that that's fundamentally taking something away that's balanced into an army.
Or you pay
I'm
for
not
it.
crazy about that. You pay for it and then you don't get it on this battle plan. That's fundamentally imbalancing against those armies. And there's I believe there's another one where you cannot. It's the last one in the list. You're not able to attack with summoned units, and you can't hold anything in reserve. And I'm not crazy about those because they do make it about what's your allegiance abilities.
Yeah.
Does your allegiance ability care about this or not? That's a little bit frustrating. You got something like Stormcast, which is inherently very, very slow.
Yeah.
And they've got some exceptions, but inherently very, very slow. But they get around that slowness with their allegiance abilities, and now you take away that.
The one thing I could see it being played is if summoning, like we talked about, there's some benefits with veterans being summoned units where maybe this is a balancing thing that everybody brings if those armies start doing particularly well. But so maybe it's just we leave it alone until we see how the things shake out, and then we could bring Turf War back in.
I'm interested to try all of these.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not telling anyone not to
there
try
are some,
them.
but there are some that I look at and I'm like, this is probably going to be very tilted away from what I usually build, which makes me want to build something else.
Right, it's interesting that way. I think my least favorite mechanic from all of the battle tactics is Silk Steel Nests, which is for no reason at all. When you take an objective or crack open an objective, you may take mortal wounds, but the mortal wounds that you take are based on your bravery. And I don't
man, the destruction
understand
player
why
just
it's based
cried.
on bravery. Just do some mortal wounds to the unit. It works. Like, that's a mechanic that works. And to just have order and chaos
Destruction
and death
is too
immune to this
strong.
and destruction.
Destruction's too strong.
You got a
I'm
whole
sorry.
destruction.
It's 2d6 for each unit within 9 inches of the pillaged objective.
Mm-hmm. So there's
That's
going
a
to be
huge.
It's a huge bubble, and you
war
can use
song
it
range.
offensively against destruction. If I'm a death army and I'm sitting on bravery 10,
Yeah.
I'm just slamming those things open on
You
my
just
opponent
take
every
them,
chance
yeah.
I can get.
No,
I
that's terrible. That's absolutely miserable. I hate
It's
it.
another situation
I
that
absolutely hate it.
I
As a
love
destruction
it
player.
because you play
I
so much
hate it.
destruction.
I don't know why it is fundamentally imbalanced against some armies. Why are we targeting armies with battle pass?
Being low bravery has already been established as like an entire detriment, and I don't think it's offset by making war scrolls better. Like
Right.
bravery is just kind of ignored. It's just okay, your destruction, your bravery's crap.
Right.
You know, it's just a blanket rule, and now it's all there's always little things to like extra screw you for having low bravery.
Narratively, the things with the lowest bravery are getting hit the worst by the bugs and spiders coming out of this. No one should be better with the bugs and spiders coming out of this
Right.
than destruction.
They ride them all the. They
Right,
should.
they've
They
got
should
spider
gain
riders.
units.
Yes,
Yeah.
you
At
get
Just
a free
Hammer, there will be
T3.
no silk steel nets.
Oh, we're playing that for sure.
Little things like that in Battleplans, I understand they add a lot of flavor. They make it a more interesting experience.
But like you said, you could do it so many different ways. that
Right,
don't
you
have
just
to-
don't target a unit or army specific thing that's really going to be potentially imbalancing.
Yeah,
I've been failing a lot of Battleshock tests lately.
I don't
Sure.
know why they don't make
It's not
this,
fun.
plus or +5 for destruction armies or something on top of the roll,
Right.
just to really.
You've
Yeah.
got some low bravery order armies. They're out there. But really, when we talk about low bravery, it's destruction.
Well,
Or
what
if
I've
you have-
noticed too is they've been strengthening bravery in order. Like it used to be a little bit of a deficiency for Idneth. They all gained a point.
Yeah.
Daughters
moved
of
up a little
Cain,
bit.
yeah, all moved up, and they got the re-roll Battleshock test, which is great.
What's your what is the bravery of most of your like Iron Jaws?
6. I think.
6.
Mhm. And there's certain elements out there that are 4. Troggoths, I think, are
yeah.
5.
Yeah.
It's-
And Troggoths in the lore are so stupid that they are
They,
not afraid
how
of
can
anything.
they be afraid? They just walk through things.
Right. And then suddenly, this unit of 3 Troggoths lost a Troggoth. The other 2 are gone. So, stop targeting bravery in battle plans, like in a fundamental way.
Unless bravery gets a lot of it's the most underdeveloped whole thing in
Sure.
the whole game. Unless it gets like a whole rework.
I love
I
that
just
they're
think, let's
playing
just
with
ditch
it
it.
more. Like, I love how Night Haunt interacts with bravery. I really think that's great.
Yeah, I bet you do.
But let's have some fundamental rework.
Yeah, I like the way they're doing it. I just don't like that my toys are all broken
Sure.
now. So battle plans on the whole, I mean, they look like they're going to be interesting.
6
Definitely
months.
interesting to
6
try.
months. If you play like one game a month, which I would say the majority of war gamers probably play 1 to 2 games a month.
Yeah, you're only going to try half of
You're gonna
these.
play this 12 times and then we're gonna have a new one. It seems a little nutty. I mean, I guess this is really for tournament players. If you're playing 1 or 2 games a month, play
Yeah, I mean-
however you want. But like,
Yeah, this is the pitch battles book. So
yeah, it's
If I'm a TO and I'm putting together a tournament, I'm grabbing a few of these. I'm grabbing a couple from the old General's
Yeah.
Handbook, and I'm looking at the War Code as well.
jeez. 6 months is not. I mean, the older I get, 6 months flies by. I cannot believe we are me talking about another one of these in 6 months. I would be fine with a year. Like
Mhm.
a year is totally.
that's
cool
what
with
I
me.
thought. That's what it originally was.
It
and
was
I guess
well.
they
The last
changed
one
it.
was a year, right? And
Yeah,
now they're looking
which-
at 6 months.
Profit is a hell of a thing.
I mean, I'm not going to be upset about changes to things every 6 months, unless they're.
This
like,
is
it
a
depends how early they're
massive,
doing it.
massive change.
This is a much bigger change, I think, than most players anticipated from this General's Handbook.
Yeah, well, and I don't know. Like, I want to be able to look at my collections and go, okay, we're highlighting a whole part of my collection that I have not played in a while, but maybe that shouldn't affect tournaments quite so much.
Well, I also want to be able to rock up to a game and remember what all the battle tactics are called. I'm not going to have that for a while.
Seriously, by the time you get them down, they're going to be gone.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we've done a year of the last ones, and I feel like most of them, you get them all down.
You do get them
quickly.
down. You start off by saying it's the old.
Yeah.
Right.
This is the old,
yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
shifting objectives. And then finally
I'm running, people still don't know greatest day ever, finest hour.
Finest hour, yeah.
Yeah. But, I don't know, 6 months does sound like a short amount of time for an update of this size.
This is a year update.
Yeah, if it was 6 months for, 6 new battle plans or 6 new,
and maybe a rule or two that lean one direction. But these rules are fundamentally changing how you build lists, how you build armies, how you play the game. This is a big change. This is as fundamental a change as 3rd edition itself.
Yes. And we're assuming that these are going to change. Like, the top lists, like, how much do those change? I don't know what's at the top.
It's actually really healthy meta. I think there's a lot of stuff you can do well with.
Yeah.
Lately I've been seeing, I think probably Pusco Blight Lords are a little bit too strong. I think maybe the Incarnate has been popping up into, like, lists that you never expected it to pop up into. Because you figured it was more for things that didn't have really good options. And now people are bringing it just as this super tanky piece.
We've gotten a lot of questions, too, about if the Incarnate's going to be legal in this season. And it is in this book. So
there's no way it's not going to be legal.
It's in the book.
Forward.
I think it's going to be legal, not just in Gur. Going forward, it's going to be legal. The lore is built that it's going
Endless
to be legal.
spells were a very specific thing that happened after the Necroquake.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about the Necroquake in years, right?
Sure. But
Endless spells are still
spells.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think the Incarnate Gur is going anywhere.
Was that before Balewind Vortex came out?
Balewind Vortex would have been the first endless spell. It wasn't an endless spell when it was created.
Yeah.
But it became an endless spell.
And now it's gone.
I know.
So,
It should be come back. I don't know.
great model.
Just find something to do with it. It doesn't even have to be cool.
It can be terrain.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't be outside. There's one probably laying in the ditch somewhere near my house.
There definitely
There's
is.
one directly behind me.
I see a ton of Balewinds being used as conversion pieces.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting. So let's talk endless spells, as long as we're on the subject.
Yeah, so Endless Spells have
We're not going to go into all of them.
We're going to read every single word. No, there are some huge winners from the Endless Spell. Cogs comes to mind.
Okay, let's talk about Cogs real quick. So Cogs, when it came out last year, was anything in the bubble. I don't know if the bubble's the same distance.
Holy Within 12.
Holy Within 12 was +1 spell for the round.
Right. +1 cast.
+1 cast. Way too effing strong.
Right.
And had to be fixed almost immediately.
You can see some of our battle plans
Yes.
back then when my Legion of the Night list was casting like
What a
13
And
spells.
everything with their bonuses and everything. It was
Yeah.
just insane. And now, it's almost as strong again.
Yeah.
I would say, I would almost rather have this bonus than the pluses to cast, just for the consistency of getting my spells off.
Often. So now Cogs, if you slow down time, you get to re-roll your casting rolls. And re-rolling casting rolls is sneaky good because it just almost eliminates your ability to miscast.
For Wizards, Holy Within 12.
And how many points are we talking about?
40
Cogs?
points.
40 points.
40
What
points.
a bargain.
This should be
It's down-
100
it's
points.
down 5 points.
Croak and Nagash and potentially Kairos. This is just an auto take. You just
never.
Yeah.
And there's no benefit. Does it give you? Or do you get a reroll unbind?
No. Just
Okay,
cast.
so there's no benefit to ever dispelling it or unbinding it or whatever.
Well, you
during,
do it in your opponent. Yeah.
You can do it.
You
Yes,
do it at the start
sure.
so they don't get it.
Yeah.
But that's the only timing that will ever work.
Yeah. You can alternately use it to speed up time, and then you get the reroll charges, which is also really good. A bubble of reroll charges. But I
At
think
40 points?
yeah.
Jeez.
If you are a wizard heavy list, auto take. If you need to get a bunch of charges, like maybe your Night Hunt, you're going to make a bunch of 3-inch charges and you really don't want to fail one, auto take.
It is a casting value of 6, which sometimes for Croak means you have to miscast to not get it.
Sure, yeah.
If you're giving him
6 is
+4.
6 is super obtainable.
Yes.
That-
Yeah.
When I
And-
say a 6 spell, I'm dancing
Yes,
because
that
it's
was-
like, I will actually get this.
That was sarcasm.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing green handed or the Gort,
Yeah.
whatever, then you miss it every time.
You're giving up a cast to cast this. but you're making all of your other casts so much more.
You're just going to end up building around it, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to end up building around a 40-point model.
You don't even have to build around it. You could throw it in as like, I have some points that I need to fill.
If you've got 4 casts and you've got 2 that are really important, then Cogs is probably making the list.
And it's down 5 points from last time.
Right.
So it
Cogs
gets better.
Is definitely a winner.
Yeah, gets better, goes down 5 points, which is,
I expect an FAQ on Cogs. The big.
It will be fixed as quickly as it was last time.
Right. When you look at Nagash's big holdback right now is that he can miscast.
Yes.
And you fundamentally make that a 1 cast per turn chance to miscast instead of an 8 cast per turn chance to miscast, as long as you can get that Cogs off. Yeah, it's big.
And then we see that the Lifeswarm, which I hate. I hate seeing it. I hate it in Night Haunt. I hate it in every army that it's in. Is now got nerfed a little bit.
Right.
It did go down.
No, it didn't. Go down.
Oh, and thank you.
Yeah,
the Lifeswarm changed, stayed 8 points, and now you can only bring back wounds or units 1 time.
We were seeing it too much. It was just becoming kind of prevalent in everything.
Yeah. Things like Pendulum didn't change, but they went down 25 points.
Did Geminids become playable yet?
No,
they were.
It's basically the same thing, so you can shut off Unleash Hells and redeploys with it.
Geminids was by far the best in
Seraphon
2nd edition, and like going back.
I don't.
Since
Were
it came
people
out.
bringing them outside of?
In every
Seraphon?
casting army.
Yeah.
It was just the best, and now it's been terrible. I wouldn't mind seeing them again, but whatever, it's fine.
If they added 1 more command ability that could shut off, I think that would suddenly make it right there.
Yeah, or do D3 mortal wounds instead of 1.
Right.
Yeah,
something like that. Palisade got better.
Yeah, you can now use it to shut off Unleash Hell.
Yeah,
ooh, that is nice. I don't mind that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it has a range of 8. So if you're casting a lot of the things that can shoot really well, Sentinels and like bow
long
snakes,
strikes,
long strikes, they have things in their army that can deal with this.
Right.
So,
but it is interesting. I think the dream of Palisades. So now it's got a bubble of units can't shoot.
Yeah.
So the dream of Palisades is that you throw it at your opponent, and then on their turn they don't shoot it. Right. That's awesome.
Or you skitter leap, or you
Right.
go through a null hole, you throw it out there, and then
More realistically, you do this to set up your charges so that they can't unleash hell during your charges.
yeah, and this is
cast on
Cast on a 5.
what's happening?
But it does increase in range every turn, which
Right.
it's not gonna.
If it sits around,
battle
your
round.
opponent
Sorry,
can just get rid of it.
battle round.
At 5, it's coming
5
out and then getting
yeah, it's
If it matters,
incredibly
your opponent's
it's
gonna get
incredibly easy to get rid of.
And in 2nd edition, Palisade was great because it move blocked. And I'm glad that they've gotten rid of your ability to just wall your opponent in with endless spells. You can no longer move block with it. Your opponent can move through it. But it no longer has that use.
Yeah.
Nick hasn't stopped talking about this next one since
the Purple
it came
Sun
out.
got a huge nerf, and it's right here.
There it is. So the Purple Sun. Whoo, what a glow up.
Well, yeah, I mean, jeez. I think just let's tone it back like maybe a little
This
bit.
is a little over the top. It's heavily random, but the randomness is not as bad as it seems. So, do you want to go through what it
No,
does?
you haven't been able to stop talking about it. So I
Sure.
want you to get it.
So it gets up the field pretty good, right? You set it up 8, it moves 8, I believe, and then it projects a bubble of 6 inches of -1 to save roll. So really, that's 22-inch effective threat range of -1 to save rolls.
What's this base? 3.5 inches wide, 3 inches
Something
wide.
like that.
Yeah.
So you get a pretty big bubble. -1 to save rolls is really, really good. If you've got a shooting army that can throw this in your opponent's face, you're already
Like
just
KO.
massively ahead. Right, like KO.
It's spelling
well, KO doesn't have the ability to move this at the end of the phase because there isn't a wizard controlling it, unless they bring an allied incanter and caster with, or something like that. But you get it up there, Zinch, you throw it up there, suddenly -1 to save for your opponent's army in your shooting phase. It's really good. And then in your melee phase, it does affect your units, so you do have to worry about the counterplay.
But you just build around it.
You can just build around it. There's a few armies and a few models that just kind of ignore this. So Night Haunt, obviously, no negative save modifiers. your Nighthaunt models can be swarming around this thing, take no drawback, while they're getting an extra rend. And Nighthaunt loves an extra rend.
You take it on a bunch of things that have terrible saves already.
Yeah.
Furies,
Marauders.
They don't care. I mean, they're dying anyway.
Yeah. And then...
It is kind of interesting to put in like something like the Green Boys that aren't in Orc War clans. They have the 6-up ward saves and terrible saves.
Bone Splitters.
Bone Splitters.
Yeah.
It's a nice boon for Bone Splitters.
Yeah,
They
they're
don't
good.
care.
Anything
And
that
they
can
need
draw a ton of attacks, especially high quality attacks that don't necessarily have rend, benefits the most from this penalty to saves. And one of my favorite units, one of my pet units that I talk about way too much probably, is Tarantulos Brood.
Yeah,
They're
nobody has them. I don't even think they've been come out yet. Have they?
I've got some.
Okay.
Yeah. They are the poster boy of what you want to use Purple Sun with. And there's a ton of units that are like this. Crossbowmen in Cities of Sigmar are like this, where they just have a absurdly high number of no rend attacks. And you suddenly give them a rend and they start blowing things up.
And then you also just get to delete
stuff. So that's the first rule. And then the second rule is that every unit within 3 inches after it moves, which is a pretty big bubble.
Yeah.
On a 1...
on a 1.
Loses a model. Well, a lot of units, you may remember, are 1 model units. All your heroes, all your monsters that do not have some kind of protection are just deleted on a 1 on a d6.
Can you affect that with Kairos?
You cannot affect that with Kairos. It's not specifically called out.
That would be great.
A 1 sounds really unlikely until you throw this into 3 units, and it's got a pretty good chance to go off. Maybe you get a double, you get to roll in those 3 units again. Maybe you cast it again the next turn. Maybe you cast it 3 times over the course of a game. You're throwing a lot of dice, and 1/1 on a hero, suddenly this thing pays for itself, even not talking about the save bonus.
Yeah.
So it's
1/1 on a god monster. Ooh.
It's balanced a little bit by a casting value of 8. KO
Right.
gets around that.
Yeah.
Yep.
In
Nighthaunt, you can make this either an auto cast with Midnight Tome or a very reliable cast with Reikenor.
So how does it work on Midnight Tome with the autocast?
It just goes off, can't be unbound. Once per game.
It's garbage.
In armies like Cities of Sigmar, let's say you're running something fluffy like 60 crossbowmen and a free guild general. So you've got 1,000,000 attacks that are on 3s and 3s at 24-inch range. And you're running in Hallowheart, so you're on +4, or even in one of the other factions, you can easily be on +3 throwing this out there because you got a built-in +1 for endless spells, you got +1 for the Hurricanum, you got +1 for a battle mage because you're in Gur, or a sorceress is going to eat something, so you're reliably going to throw this out there. And then those Cities of Sigmar units that have very quality attacks and 0 rend, Sisters of the Watch come along, crossbowmen. Any of the free guild units,
the Pistoliers, the
steam guns on the gyrocopter, all of them love another rank.
And it's 70 points.
70 points.
70 points is not hard to fit in.
Right.
The typical point value on hard to take endless spells is 98 and above, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where you're starting to say, I either have to take a unit or I can take this endless spell. 70, you make concessions, but you can get it in.
Does that feel too cheap or too...
I think it's right on, except for the armies that can abuse it.
yeah, because it's got a casting value of 8, so it's hard to cast for armies that can't auto cast or croak.
A high casting value for an endless spell, if you can get there reliably, then becomes a benefit.
Yeah.
Right. So if you've got something like the Midnight Tome, so you just auto get it out, or a Reikenor that's casting it at +3, maybe with a reroll from Cogs. They're going to get it out there, and then your opponent has to beat that 8, which some armies can do, and some armies really, really have a hard time with. And if the Purple Sun is just sitting there giving them -1 to save game long,
Potentially blowing stuff up.
blowing stuff up every turn. We talked about like 3 turns. Well, that's only a round and a half. If your opponent can't deal with this, and it sits out there for 3 rounds...
you're wasting your heroic action every time to try to get a 9 on dice.
So if this sits out there for 3 rounds, on average, it's going to delete a model per unit. It's going to delete every hero it touches. It's going to delete every monster it touches. On average, if it sits out there for 3 rounds. That's pretty good for 70 points.
Yeah.
I was actually, now that you mentioned heroic actions, I was actually kind of hoping there would be a heroic action associated with this book, something that would help veterans. And then you go through the book and you're like, I don't know if they need any more rules.
Well, and then another one I was going to highlight quick is Quicksilver Swords.
Right.
Now you roll 12 dice, 5 ups do the mortal.
So that's double
That's
damage.
twice
from
as
before.
good as it was. And now, instead of it not being a ward, they just can't be nullified. So in the
be
new
negated,
Morathi War Scroll, that actually affects her now. So that's kind of a... And as in playing Morathi, if you can accelerate her timetable of leaving at all, she becomes a huge hindrance rather than like a bonus add round.
If somehow you get rid of her in 3 turns instead of 4, she's no longer
Every
worth her
round
points.
you take off of the 680 point model that is so crucial to the construction of that army is brutal.
One of the spells that got no play before was Ravenax Gnashing Jaws, and now I think it's good.
By the way, Quicksilver Swords dropped from 90 to 60.
Sure. It was terribly overcosted.
It was horrible
Yeah.
before. Now you can... I could see it being just brought because it's a pretty good new hero.
Well, and anything that can't be ward saved is worth something.
Average of 4 mortal wounds too. You don't have to spike very hard to start peeling off foot heroes or putting a big chunk of damage into units.
Yeah, that's good.
So you were talking about Gnashing Jaws?
Ravenax Gnashing Jaws. Wow, what a glow up.
It's been bad since its creation.
It's been
way.
terrible.
It's
and
a
it's
great
such a cool
model. Yeah.
I don't know why I keep looking behind me like, do I have this?
You do
Like,
have it,
They all
yeah.
came in one box.
Yeah. So Ravenax now moves 3d6 inches, and then you pick one unit that it targets at the end of its move. And whatever...
That 3d6 is rerollable.
The turn you cast, you get to reroll that 3d6. So on a normal 3d6, you're averaging 10.5 inches. On a rerolled 3d6, you're up to the 12 or 13 inch range. So have that number in your head, 12 inches, let's say. You then throw it into something, and one unit that it's nearby takes the difference between its movement characteristic and the movement of Ravenax. So if you throw it into a 7 wound model, which is pretty fast...
Yeah.
Then on average, it's going to take 5 mortal wounds. That's a foot hero dead.
Yeah. No, and I mean, and then you talk about there are slow armies that fire Slayers move 4. You know, like this is now going to start dealing with the Volkite Berserkers. We're talking about 8 wounds to a unit.
Yes.
10. That's 4 dead Volkites, and now it's just really solid.
Yeah.
Yep.
It did go up to 60.
But 60 is manageable.
Yeah.
There are very few things where it's going to feel bad to have. Ideneth, if they don't have a lot of thralls or reavers, maybe you're not happy that you've got it.
Yeah.
But it's still probably going to pick off a foot hero at some point. And occasionally, you're going to roll a really big number. Occasionally, you're going to get that 16 or that 17. And then you're going to look at your opponent's army and say, I can move this thing 17 inches and then delete something.
Yeah.
And there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
And then probably have one left that you would want to talk about, right? You were pretty excited about.
Spell Portal, right?
Yeah. Well, Spell Portal is still good. Spell Portal's still good. Laoshan the Soul Seeker. This was pointed out to me by Sean, the Demon Lord Sean, who's a friend of the channel, and
Furies Sean.
Furies Sean, 60 Furies Sean. You'll know him well. It was pointed out by him that they added a line to the bottom of this. So there are so few movement abilities in this game that you can move after, and now this one you can move after it drops you up the field. The timing on this is really interesting. So the movement for Laoshan happens, it's wizard only, it happens at the end of the hero phase, and they shrank the size that can fit into this. It's got to be wholly within 3 inches, so you've got to have a 3 inch or smaller base. Moves at the end of the hero phase, and then you can move in the movement phase after that. So you've got to end that first move 9 inches away, but then you can go wherever you want.
And without thinking, obviously, Guos get left out.
Yep.
And
Bellicor is too big for
now,
this.
but you
A
could
lot of things are too big
potentially
for this.
throw Arcane Tome and make something a wizard and then get this benefit, right? So
And it doesn't have to be the wizard that casts it. It just has to be a wizard.
Sure.
That wizard takes a mortal wound, but you're fine with that. It's one mortal wound.
Yeah.
That can be negated. There's some interesting play with this, I think.
You're going to start measuring bases to see what hits hard at under -3.
Right. Yes. And because of the timing, it would be way too strong, I think, if you could do this in the middle of the hero phase and then start throwing out spells with this wizard. But if you get a double a turn, that's what you're looking at. But you're really looking at something that can do a lot of work in the shooting phase or in the combat phase, or that has a buff that can really get projected up the field this way. The contorted epitome is what Sean brought up, and I completely agree with him. In Legion of the First Prince, with the fourfold blade, that thing becomes just a beat stick. It's got a 12-inch movement, so you bring this 9 inches away from the opponent. It can go wherever it wants, and then get in, do a lot of damage. There's going to be, at some point during this General's Handbook, there's going to be a list that comes up that really leans on this getting a wizard wherever you want him.
Casting value of 6, so it's going to go off.
Mm-hmm.
So, you said it would be bad if you could pick that wizard up and then move the spell and then be able to cast spells from where you are.
Right. So if you could throw a wizard up the field and then start casting Purple Sun or something like that from that. Yeah.
Even Arcane Bowl all of a sudden becomes especially good when you're not close.
Yeah, you can't do that with it.
Yeah, because it moves at the end of the hero phase.
Right. Okay. But you still have just a ton of play if you can find those wizards or find those beat sticks that you can turn into wizards and start throwing them anywhere they want to go in this. There's not a ton of really killy 3-inch or under models, but they're out there.
Yeah, you just got to look. Any other points? We've taken care of on the spells, right? We feel pretty good about what we did there.
Yeah, Spell Portal's still good.
I just keep bringing Spell Portal up because I can't believe it's almost exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. You can no longer throw an Endless through it.
Yes.
Because they made Endless spells really good.
Oh, so. by the way, the spell you were just talking about, 30 points.
Oh, yeah.
So, so it's pricey. It's hard to fit in the list.
Mine is on the way.
Yeah.
Ordered it earlier.
Yeah, but they didn't change the points for Spell Portal. Mm-hmm. And only changed that you can't do endless spells through it.
Right. You can still move an endless spell through it, but you can't cast the endless spell through it.
Which used to be a core rule that you couldn't extend the range
in
of
second edition, yeah.
But now you definitely can.
Any points you guys noticed? You noticed that they changed the Huracanes.
So the Huracan Wind Spirits became leaders, so now they can take relics or artifacts and Goading Arrogance. Yeah.
And now you can take multiple Lore Seekers again.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Until the FAQ.
Literally, it happens every time they print the Lore Seeker that they take unique away, and then they put it back on in the first FAQ, and just assume it's supposed to be there.
Multiple Lore Seekers is really good.
It is. It can be.
It's crazy. Multiple of anything you're supposed to take only one of is probably okay.
There's a bunch of armies that got some minor points tweaks. Only a few that really got some kind of fundamental points changes.
Well, you play Slanesh.
Yeah.
And what got the glow ups there?
Well, Sigvald got quite a bit cheaper.
Which is huge, because that is the strength of the army, so now it's a double strength.
Demonettes got cheaper. Not by a tremendous amount, but enough, right? Cheap battle line is something that Slanesh really needed, so
don't bury the lead. Don't you dare bury the lead. Gludos went down 5 points.
So you just have options now. You can build around him like never before. But overall, Slanesh points came down. The Twin Souls and the Myrmidesh Painbringers really get a fundamentally awesome glow up here. If you're running a Lord of Pain, they become battle line, which means they're veterans fighting in 2 ranks. They really needed that because they're those 32
And did they go down in points? Awesome.
They came down in points. So they start to become a lot more compelling than before. Overall, I think Slanesh gets a little bit more play on the table with this. It's not great, but a little bit.
We've seen people do well with Slanesh. It's not a hopeless book. And sometimes these little corner improvements all of a sudden can take something that seemed especially weak and make it strong. I am happy in Beast now. I really feel like I can fit a Wildfire Taurus in. I think it dropped 40 points. It's now 70, which means I'm going to find a way to get that in because that is a very strong endless spell for for beasts.
Yeah, something else we were talking about, the Tarantulos Brood and the
The Dark Oath Ravagers.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are not in the book.
Right.
So
that is
screw you.
They can't be
that
played.
is obviously
Currently, until the FAQ comes, they are not legal units.
There was some weird
which-
points change I thought overall for Zinch. Like things
Yeah,
that just
Zinch
didn't
kind
make
of went
any
all over the
sense
place.
to me.
Flamers got a little bit more expensive, if I
Yeah,
remember.
they're 190 points now.
Like
which
I feel like Zinch isn't played at all right now.
Right.
Other than people taking units to put in Legion of the First Prince. And
I think there are some things that make Zinch a little bit more interesting here, though. The Purple Sun is something that a shooting Zinch list loves, right?
Yeah.
They love to have a spell that can make their shooting better.
everyone's gonna take Acolytes now that they're down to 125.
Sure.
Blue Scribes went up. Gaunt Summoner
Significantly Blue Scribes
25
went up,
points. And are they played more in like Legions and stuff? Right?
Yeah.
Blue Scribes is great in both, right?
It's just automatic
Yeah.
cast on a 2-up, right?
But
yeah.
and its War Scroll spell is a bubble of rerolling casts. Although now a bubble of rerolling casts,
Isn't necessary.
you got other options for that.
And the one thing that there used to be a dichotomy between the Beast book and the Zinch book, between the points between Zangor Enlightened and Skyfires, and now they match that. So that actually, with how good the Enlightened and Discard, now they benefit from an extra point of run and some other stuff that Beast of Chaos got going on. But it might be an option of something to bring that's more hitty, because Zinch suffers from that.
Yeah, and Gaunt Summoner on foot got broken out from it. It never used to be in the Disciples section for some reason. So now that's in the Disciples section, just like Slaves to Darkness.
One thing to maybe touch on is that in the previous General's Handbook, there were a lot of monsters that are not very good, and a lot of them are still not very good. But you no longer get a 1 victory point tax every time one dies, which makes a lot of them more compelling.
Yeah, I'll probably want to bring multiple monsters now in Beast of Chaos, because before it was concerning, you didn't want to give up that point. But now I want redundancy for their heroic action.
Yeah.
Or not heroic action, I'm sorry, Monstrous Rampage, that gives them summoning points. Did they help out? I did not see this. Did they help out Blades of Corn, or are we just acting like that book doesn't exist?
Blades of Corn does not exist. There were, I don't think, any
a
really
10-point
fundamental...
drop for Slaughter Priest.
Right. No real fundamental points changes. The biggest maybe improvement that comes from Blades of Corn here is that your Blood Reavers are now fighting in 2 ranks. Your Blood Warriors are fighting in 2 ranks.
I think Bloodletters in 2 ranks is
Bloodletters.
actually okay.
Yep. And Bloodletters, of course, you can re-roll for the Mortal Wounds with the Wrath of Corn Thirster for now. We expect those re-rolls to go away, but they're there for now. Yeah. And so there is some glow up in Corn just in
like you said with the monsters. You can actually bring
some thirsters.
4 Thirsters and not feel like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
just giving all the points away. But
yeah,
they're still extremely lacking in
Sure.
competitive balance.
But I think when you look at the things we've talked about, these the veterans, it's extremely punitive when they die. You want them to hang around. There's a lot of things that get bonus damage against them. Well, if you're bringing a bunch of Thirsters, you're not getting bonus damage against you because your veterans aren't fighting on the front lines.
Yep.
You can get in and do a significant amount of damage to their veterans. You know, maybe this is enough to bring that Reapers of Vengeance style list to a more competitive
And
place.
Corn cares not where the blood flows.
Right.
So if we're killing a lot more stuff and units are dying and we're getting blood tithe, we don't care.
It's important to, like, 3.0 books saw almost no changes outside of Endless Spells, or maybe no changes outside of Endless Spells. The Cathalar went down 35 points.
This is a Frankenstein period
Gotta
right
be a
now
new
going
war.
on with the Cathalar. It is the worst. It is my least favorite model in the game. I hate it.
Yeah.
One
with a
unit
passion.
to call out in Corn before we move past it. Mighty Skull Crushers in Bounty Hunters are a terrifying blunder against veterans. And maybe that's what you do with your Corn list. You just say, I'm going to delete my opponent's veterans and grind it out from there. So, yes, the Cathalar. Wow.
Now that seems like maybe there's some we don't know.
I mean, play as many games as you can right now.
Right.
Yeah,
Squeeze in extra
I've
stuff.
never met somebody who's like the Kevlar's totally fair.
Yeah,
Like,
the
totally
Kevlar
fun to play against.
should cost less.
Thank God everything I played just battle shocked off. I finally killed one unit.
Yeah. Sentinels, Severith all stayed the same. Now
Is that
Flamers are 20 points more than Sentinels.
Sure.
Well,
you know, they're
everybody's-
they're on par with what are the Slanesh archers?
Oh, the Bliss Barb archers. Yeah.
And then the Spirit of the Wind became a leader, so now I can take Goading Arrogance and move around in your shooting phase.
My only theory is
position
that
myself where I want to be.
the theory has to be that these are priced in so that there's consistency between the GHB, because a lot of these just don't. And the book that it should be.
Speaking of consistency in the GHB, there is a unit, one of the Vermin Lords. The Skaven Battle Tome and the General's Handbook come out on exactly the same day.
Are they different?
And have different points values for this unit. This one of the
Which
Vermin
one?
Lords.
Do you know which
I
one?
believe it's the Deceiver, might be the Corruptor. So you've got two different points values on the same day for that unit. Neither one of them is more valid than the other. And so
I'm using
are they obviously like very like is one
very different.
Yeah, is one 10 points and the
Very
other one's,
different,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And so there has to be a day one FAQ for that. But I expect a day one FAQ for a lot of things. I expect some new War Scrolls. I expect some new Allegiance abilities changes. I expect a big change for some things that we're not seeing yet.
But I wouldn't be shocked if there's nothing either, other than the
glaring
errors,
problems.
like
Yeah.
Tarantulas should never be in a book. So that is obviously a mistake.
yeah.
But everything else,
They
no.
should do a buyback program. So how do you guys feel overall about this GHB?
Confused.
Confused? Like
I'm just in a place where I really need to just start playing, and I'll play
Grinding
what
games.
I'll probably start with just a list that I've been playing.
yeah.
Make a couple of changes, maybe bring more monsters or whatever, and then see where it goes. I can't imagine anyone has it all figured out already.
It is worth pointing out that if you watch reviews on these books, the points values are in a separate pamphlet. They're not in the actual
Like the old General's Handbook.
Yes,
did.
they're not in the actual bound book. So if you're watching just a review of the pitch battles, like stuff like that, it's not going to have the points values in there.
And it seemed like all third edition just avoided points changes.
Endless spells
For the most
changed
part,
and
yeah.
invocations and stuff.
But anything that had a book come
Except
out.
to increase Hedonites. Oh, you mean the
Yes.
of the third edition
Yes,
books, they've
yes,
already
yes,
changing
yes,
those.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Go Trek went up
Yeah.
50 points.
Yeah.
Fine.
So one thing that again,
Go
Sean
Trick
and
did
I
go
were,
up 50 points in this
Yeah.
book.
he didn't need it anymore.
He's
That was-
dominating.
they were solving a problem that existed 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Another thing that Sean and I talked about earlier today was just, do you look at this book and all of the incredible changes, and do you say, I'm going to try all of these things at once and see how things shake out? Or am I going to take one slice of it and lean into it, and then another slice of it and lean into it, and really get a feel for each of those? And, I think there's a ton of experimentation I want to do with the book, and I'm of the approach, I'm going to try everything.
Yeah.
I'm doing everything at once. I'm bringing units that I bought, and I'm like, well, I'll build them and put them in my case.
There's just the time restriction too. This isn't
Sure.
our job. There's no money attached to
Right.
it. How
You
many
only get
games
so many
you get
games
to
in.
play?
Yeah.
So I might as well try to figure it out all at once, and then lean on seeing lists and listening to podcasts and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'll probably just start with a 3.1 list. I guess we'd call it 3.2, and
3.2,
just see where I go with it.
Do you listen to this podcast?
I can't. No, I rewatch just for the stunning beauty of the three hosts.
Sure.
Um,
So it's exciting. There's going to be a bunch that shakes out. We've got tournaments coming up in July. We're each going to 2 tournaments in July, and they're both using the new General's Handbook.
Yeah.
So we've got like 2 weeks to get a list submitted that's going to take this into account. And that's, to me, it's nerve-wracking, but it's also incredibly exciting that the game is just like a whirlwind right now.
Watch, it's just gonna fall with a thud. Nothing's gonna change.
Yeah.
Everything's gonna stay.
Yeah,
God,
I'm
all
just
this-
going to be running 8 dragons and long
Yeah.
strikes.
All the stuff I have to pretend like I was gonna paint in time.
Yeah, right.
It's gonna suck.
All right. Well, I think we did it again.
Yeah.
We do it every time.
Yeah.
Well, and our audio worked this time, so we only had to record this one once.
I was not.
That's
doing it
so
again.
that's so convenient.
I might be home by 11. I'm excited.
Thanks everybody for watching. Massive thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel over the past year. We finally hit our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and we've eclipsed it, and we're rolling right on to the next 1,000. And just thank you so much if you're one of those. If you're not already, we'd love if you joined us. Likewise, if you're not in our Discord already, where this conversation happens all the time, 24/7. Constantly there's discussion there. We'd love to have you in there.
And we're officially monetized now?
Well, we will be once YouTube approves our application.
So here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You saw how I updated that dice tray.
Sure.
We might have different colored dice trays. I think we'll get like $8 a month.
Sure.
Imagine all the colors of dice
We
trays
can
we'll
only
get.
hope.
I mean,
I just
we
want,
will never stop improving with this new money.
We are committed.
I just want people to see your basement once and the amount of stuff. He has every army.
We should do a tour of your
something.
collection
Yeah.
Someday. I did get a small cabinet. I bought it at a family auction, so it'll be lighted. It'll be cool.
It's going to be laying on your floor.
It'll be a fight to see what gets in it. But
We could do half of an episode, or more than half an episode, but half of an episode that is just, let's walk through Justin's collection.
we'll do that sometime.
I would also love to hear how people like episodes like this, and then we want to do potentially battle tome reviews for the Skaven
we're going
and the
to, right?
Sylvan.
We're going to.
Yes, and we'd love to hear if that's something you guys are interested in, and if that's something you'll watch. And once we do them, how we do. Because
And we're gonna bring in different people. Like we have local people like Jake or Sean or people you've seen on the channel that have better experience than one of the three of us at least in playing these books. So it will be nice getting a new face, a new opinion.
Absolutely.
Things, so.
And it lets us really focus in on one topic at a time instead of trying to grab 5 topics and turn it into an episode. So
it'll be good. Hopefully we'll keep I like our concise overviews. So I hope we don't do the page by page every.
There's a place for that. I don't think it's our place.
No, I don't think it's us either. So.
Until Games Workshop gets us some early access.
Ooh. Well, 1,000 subscribers.
emails are out.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody
Thanks,
for watching.
Thank you.